Hey everyone, it's Father Leo here at Plating Grace, and this is a message for all of those people who are struggling and are worried about the coronavirus, which is certainly a very real problem. And what I want to talk about is the difference between virtue and this virus, which basically have the same root word, vir, which literally means strength. That's where we get the word viral, where we get the word virile. It's the same word as virus, as virtue. But I think what we need to do is realize something from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 15, where he speaks about it's not what enters a man that renders him unclean. It's what actually comes out of a man's heart, which creates all the problems. And we don't exactly know at this stage where the virus came from. We do know that it came from a territory in the Wuhan region in China. And there is suspicion that it might be linked to not only the bat soup, so to speak, but also something that might be created in biochemical warfare locations of China. So who knows? But I do know this, that it has really upset a lot of people, and people are incredibly concerned, and they're taking incredible precautions, and some people are really living in fear. But where does fear come from? It doesn't come from something from outside that enters in. It's actually something that comes from the inside and manifests itself outward. So while I have no authority to say what this virus is about, I'm not a doctor. But I do know that there are things that are killing humanity way quicker than this virus. Abortion is one of them. War is another. Drunk driving and people murdering one another. That is more of a pandemic at this stage. What really worries people, and I acknowledge this completely, is that people don't know where it came from or what to do with it exactly. There's not an antidote yet. People thought the same thing about the AIDS epidemic as well, and so there was a great fear. But again, where does this fear come from? It comes from within, not from the outside, because there's a lot of scary things out there. But what has to happen first is a strengthening of what we fully believe about our own lives. Fact is, we are very mortal beings. And whenever we hear of things like this potential pandemic of the coronavirus, it just makes us even more susceptible to the fears. And that is one reason why Christ said it very clearly many times, be not afraid. It requires us to strengthen our own virtue, our strength. That's the only thing that's really going to fight against the craziness that's kind of happening right now in response to this virus. Which is stronger, the virus or virtue? I think if we strengthen our virtue more and our resolve to fight for the dignity of humanity, we're going to be less likely to be prejudgmental of people from China. We are going to be less fearful of what could possibly happen. We're going to act a little bit more rationally. And I think you saw images perhaps of Vice President Pence praying with a group of scientists and doctors trying to figure out what best to do, seeking inspiration. He's been basically made fun of in mainstream media because his reliance on prayer. But guess what? That's where virtue comes from. When we talk to God about our own mortality, when we talk to God about our own weaknesses, and when we talk to God seeking inspiration to try to find a cure. If there's one thing that I've seen over and over again, is that those who have an inner fear generally tend to react in a less rational and methodological way. And I am not diminishing the need to be precautious. Look, I'm taking vitamin C pills too. I am washing my hands. I'm doing everything that needs to be done in order to stay healthy, including getting rest. But it also includes strengthening my resolve in prayer to increase the virtue, the inner strength in me, because the fact is I know I'm going to die at some point in my life, but I don't want to live in fear in the moment. I want to live in hope and in strength and in confidence, not stupidity and not diminishing again the urgency of needing to find a resolution to this. But really, I just want to make sure that virtue is stronger than the virus. So that's my message for you. Please make sure that you're feeding your body, mind, and soul, not just with the, how shall I say, the propaganda perhaps of the news, but making sure that we have the common facts, that the flu is technically much more dangerous right now and more of a threat, and other things are more of a threat than currently the coronavirus. I'm not saying that this is not to be taken seriously, but I'm saying it shouldn't rule your life. And what should rule your life is virtue. Knowing that in humility, we are all going to die, but between now and the time that God calls us home, we have to live our life on the path headed towards heaven, which means be not afraid. Let's not be reactionary and even racially prejudiced. Let's make sure that we are being compassionate. Let's make sure that we are being aware of our surroundings and making sure that we take care of this temple, which is basically what God told us to do in the first place. In other words, be healthy by eating well, by exercising, by resting, by taking care of all of the things that helps to build and boost up our immune system, but more importantly, doing all we can to increase our virtue. So I hope this little message helps. Trust that I'll be praying for you and for all those involved in the medical field and in the scientific world, but also praying for people who are sometimes very forgotten, those who are sick, the elderly, those who are most susceptible to this virus. And we pray that God will truly be our divine physician to give us the strength to make sure that virtue always wins. God bless you.